We are just crushing it here at Shoulder 360 with the Ortho Show. We've had some of the most amazing guests on the planet. Next up is part of the French shoulder royalty, Pascal Boileau, who is an amazing orthopedic surgeon who specializes in the shoulder. He's in Nice. We talk about his rich history of his training here in the United States very early on in the explosion time of shoulder in the late 80s when arthroscopy was just coming on. Shoulder replacements were evolving tremendously. His personal and professional relationship with Gilles Walsh as well. Just a remarkable story of his innovation, the thoughts and processes that he shares around the world. He's an amazing surgeon. It's a great episode. Dr. Scott Sigman, #follow the fro.
From Medical Media, this is The Ortho Show.
Hello, world. Dr. Scott Sigman, your favorite opioid-sparing orthopedic surgeon here for another episode of the Ortho Show podcast, where we have just been bringing some of the greatest shoulder surgeons in the world here at Shoulder 360 to the Ortho Show podcast. Today is no exception. We have part of the French shoulder royalty, Dr. Pascal Boileau, who is an orthopedic surgeon, specializes in the shoulder from Nice, France, where he is the head of the Institute of Musculoskeletal and Sports Reconstructive Surgery. It is such a pleasure, Pascal, to have you with us.
Thank you very much. What an introduction.
What an introduction, of course. Well, it is so true. Yes, thank you so much. Well, we're thrilled to have you. So we have listeners from all over the world. We always like to start at the beginning for our guests. So where were you born? Where did you grow up? Were there other doctors in the family? Were you the first? So tell us that experience.
No doctor in the family. As I said, my father was a butcher. My grandfather was a carpenter, so I could be only an orthopedic surgeon.
Of course, yes, a butcher and carpenter. You had all of the genes. There was no question about it. I love that.
I was born in the northeast of France, close to Germany.
Yes.
In Alsace-Lorraine, you know.
Yes.
And then my parents moved down in the south in Nice when I was 14, and so I did all my.
And you did all your training in Nice as well. And so, you know, I think it's fascinating because for our international colleagues that have really achieved, you know, world-renowned recognition, it's not by accident. It requires, you know, time and energy. So you did some fellowships. You came to the U.S. for fellowships as well. Who did you train with?
Yeah. First, I did a fellowship in France, in Lyon, with Gilles Walsh, who was my mentor, and Henri Lejour for the knee. And then I did two fellowships actually in the USA. First fellowship was with SOFCOT, French Orthopedic Society, to visit some orthopedic surgeons in the country.
Yes.
And then I have another fellowship paid by the CESEC, the European Shoulder Society. Actually, I was the first traveling fellow with Roger Emery from London, and we make a big tour for 6 weeks.
Give some shout outs. Who did you visit? Do you must know remember at this time?
Of course. So the first fellowship I visited, I came actually to the San Diego course, which was the only one course that existed.
Yes, that was it for shoulder in the U.S. for sure. Yes.
So to learn arthroscopy of the shoulder, and it was very nice. And so I met Jim Esch.
Yes.
And I took advantage to be in the West Coast to visit Steve Snyder.
Yes.
So I was there when he described the slap lesion.
Yes.
And also I visited Arvar Hellman, who did the first acromioplasty under arthroscopy.
Wonderful, which we can't do anymore, but that's okay.
Yeah. And Dave Morrison.
Yes.
Who was working in Long Beach, California.
So it's really fascinating because for you, I think it was an easier choice than most. I mean, we're contemporaries. I think we're very close in age, and I've been in practice for nearly 30 years. You know, we grew up in a time when there was a true evolution of shoulder, right?
Yeah.
We were transitioning to arthroscopy. Steve Snyder, J.R. Richmond, Eugene Wolfe, Dick Kaspari.
Eugene Wolfe as well.
Yes, of course. And so, you know, the people that were really starting shoulder arthroscopy, and then there's a tremendous evolution in shoulder replacement that happened as well. And you were positioned at the same time where the French were really taking off with Ramont as far as the new concepts and ideas. But so was it natural for you to make a selection to be a shoulder specialist? Because there weren't that many at the time.
No, but when I did my fellowship in Lyon,
yes,
it was to go with Henri Dejour for the knee, and at the same time with Gilles Valge for the shoulder. And I realized at that time that we were far behind with the shoulder compared to the knee and to the hip, of course.
yes.
And that kept me interested. So I started to read and I review patients with Gilles. He was promoting at that time to do bicep stenotomy for massive irreparable cuff tears. And people were thinking we were crazy.
Yes.
So we needed to review the patients to make sure they were doing well, and they were all doing well. And when Gilles presented the results in Paris at that time, you know, all the big professors in Paris just tried to kill him because of that.
Whenever you have an idea where that many people are against you, it's usually a great idea.
That's true.
Always met with skepticism, for sure. Innovation always met with skepticism. But that's wonderful. So you saw a need, right? So, you know, you had spent some time with both amazing professors, and shoulder was the calling because there was so much work to do.
Yeah, but for many years, you know, I did hips, knees,
yes,
and shoulder was not a big amount of my
There
practice.
wasn't as much to do.
But more and more, it was growing. That's why the patient, in fact, forced you to be hyper specialized.
Well, I mean, you were blessed to work with Gilles Walsh, who is again one of the fathers of shoulder surgery, right? You think of, you know, of Neer, and you think of so many of the professors that were Rockwood who were doing amazing work, and that such a great time, right? As the explosion of all these new things that are happening. So it was a real opportunity. Now, it wasn't as easy back then. Like nowadays, like you could go every weekend do a shoulder course around the world.
Yeah.
Literally, you'd be welcomed.
Too many.
Right? There are almost too many at this point now. This is a wonderful course. We love Shoulder 360. But, you know, the point being, it wasn't easy back then, right? I mean, so Gilles had a course, and you started in with that early on as well, correct?
Yeah. And just to come back to the San Diego course.
Yes.
You must realize that at that time, there was no euros, there was francs.
Yes.
And the dollars was very high compared to the francs.
Yeah.
And to go to this course and to spend some time in the US, I had to borrow money from the bank that I reimbursed later in my career.
I don't know what you and Lafosse tells the same story for when he started the course. He took a loan out from the house to be able to start his course.
Yeah.
I mean, but amazing that now, you know, we take our ability to communicate for granted now, right? We text each other, I email you, you know, but back then there was no email or texting.
No.
You had to come together. You had to come to Congress to be able to share ideas. And that's a big focus for what you do now. Your course is one of the most respected courses in the world every 2 years.
I just try to copy the San Diego course, except that the San Diego course at that time was only arthroscopy.
Yes.
And I started immediately with arthroscopy, arthroplasty, and fractures, because I also treated many patients with proximal humerus fractures.
Yes.
And that's one of my favorite subject as well.
Yeah. And so, you know, it's amazing that the transition that's happened. So tell us about the live surgery, you know, part of that as well. I mean, so please.
To do live surgery, you mean during the course?
Yes.
It's always a difficult experience.
Yes.
I think it's not good for our coronary, as you know.
Yes. Well, you're only operating on a patient that you've really never met before. You're relying on, you know, someone to do that at your course. But if you were at Laurent and went to Annecy, and then you're only being evaluated by some of the world's greatest surgeons watching you do the surgery. There's no critique there.
And they're waiting for you to fall down.
Yes, I know it is.
No, but the thing is that you should do like you would treat your patients.
Yes.
And then...
But it, you know, it is important because it's a way to share ideas, and there's nothing better than being able to watch a surgery live versus on a TV, etc. So it's really wonderful that you and Laurent, you go back and forth. It's every other year, right? You don't want to interfere with one another, which is wonderful. Yes. Yeah. You are both professors at each of your courses, again, which is wonderful. So, you know, it's fascinating. You know, we're colleagues, and when I first started, you know, the Neer prosthesis had two heads, small and large, right? And maybe three stems that went down, small, medium, and large. And now it's amazing the transition to the reverse total shoulder, which has really become, you know, so important. But did you see that coming? That now, for example, in the US, 75% of total shoulders are reversed.
Yeah, and the reason is simple. It's because it's easier to do. It's more forgiving for the surgeons.
Yes.
And that's the evolution. But we as you know, with Gilles, we designed the first anatomic prosthesis.
Yeah, so you were part of the anatomic movement first before making
and it was really nice because the results were and still are fantastic. As you know, the only problem is the glenoid side, the plastic, which is not the solution, obviously. But that's why today people are coming back to anatomic hemis, which works very well as well in young patients, at least, who are very active. And then there was the adventure of the reverse. And the good thing is that the FDA did not approve the prosthesis for 10 years.
I know. So France, you guys were, people were flying in from all over the world.
Gave us the time to evaluate the implants and to see the results and to see the weaknesses and the strengths. And but I think at the end of the day, it was a good thing because when I see now the explosion of the market of the reverse here,
it's amazing.
I was thinking if you would have it 10 years earlier, it would be probably 100% today.
I mean, you mentioned the story of Gilles Walsh with the biceps, tenotomy getting laughed out, but Mark Frankel, he recognized quite early. He went to France. He trained with you.
He visit us.
Yes, he would visit you. And then he went back to the United States and they would laugh him off the stage. This is not it. What are you talking about? No one's doing this. This is the wrong operation. So I've always lived my life now. When I have an idea and everybody tells me it's wrong, I know it's probably right. And you've been very passionate with innovation, right? You continue to work with industry. Tell us about your relationship with Mr. Tournier, which I think obviously was one of the leading people early on in shoulder replacement.
Alain Tournier was the CEO of the Tournier company, who is a good friend of myself and Gilles.
Yes.
And when we met him the first time with Gilles, and Alain Tournier told us, we're going to do a shoulder prosthesis, but I just do it for some people, some surgeons who are asking for a shoulder replacement in my hospital where I sell the knees and the hips. But frankly, there is no market.
Amazing.
So we say, we know there is no market, but we need a prosthesis for our patients, so let's do it. That's how it started.
And so next it's bought by Wright, and now it's bought by Stryker. And I mean, look, I don't do shoulder replacement, but when I go in and I watch, and I see how much variability there is. There are so many choices, right? And there is no direct consensus yet.
No.
We're still learning.
Yeah. And that's why we are so excited. We're still learning. If you learn, you keep young.
Yes, absolutely. I so admire the French shoulder surgeons who are some of the greatest in the world, and you've been very passionate about developing that. And so it's wonderful now to see the relationship. Now the world's a smaller place, so we can go to these courses, we can work with one another, we can learn from each other, and so it's always a wonderful thing coming together.
And the same thing happened with the arthroscopy. I mean, when we developed arthroscopic Latarjet, Laurent with screws, myself with buttons, people were thinking we were crazy, and we were kind of crazy, but I mean, you need to innovate. And
it was one of the most difficult times of my life. And when I was in probably about 10 years ago, I went to France with Laurent, Matthew, and Matt Ravenscroft and Paul Favorito, and learned that operation. And it is a challenge. At this time, I've moved over to Ivan Wong's technique for the distal tibial allograft. But the time I spent learning how to do that operation, to be able to visualize the shoulder from the front, has really made me that much better of an arthroscopist. So thinking outside the box was wonderful that you guys would come up with such an idea.
Yeah. And I think the fact that I started with arthroscopic biceps tenodesis. So I was really working in the front of the shoulder for many years. But I think what is important today is we develop a guided technique for the arthroscopic Latarjet, which is very important because I think coming from posterior to make the glenoid drilling is very important because number one, it's safe. You stay inside the joint. And number two, it's very accurate. You're parallel to the joint line. So that's one thing. The other thing is that people still don't believe that suture button could be used to obtain bone healing. I can promise you it works.
Oh, there's no question. I mean, you have the data that you've been sharing that data along.
And it's mechanically,
yes,
suture button is nothing else than a bolt, and mechanically it's stronger than 1 or 2 screws. So we should just realize that. People don't really realize the progresses that have been made with textile sutures. They are as resistant as metallic wire or cables, and they have the benefit of being possible to tension the suture and to make it rigid. So it's not true. People are talking about non-rigid fixation. It is a rigid fixation if, and that's what was my idea, to use a tensioner to make it rigid and to create a bone.
So I'm a smart man, and so I will say this: I know you're right, and I also know that Dr. Lafosse is also right because he uses screws. So 2 people can be right and still have good solutions,
sure,
for the same problem. So no, I love that. And by the way, I don't know if you know, but the next time you come to Smith & Nephew in Boston on River Road, I live right there, so we will have dinner together. So you'll let us know the next time you come in.
Of course,
that would be wonderful.
I will.
So what's the next great thing in shoulder replacement? What's going to really make a difference moving forwards?
Difficult questions.
I know it's not easy. There's so many options.
No, I think we need a prosthesis to revise the fail reversed. When there is no more glenoid, for instance, we need something to a salvage procedure, a salvage implant for those difficult cases.
Are you more excited about the software now or about the hardware?
No, I'm very excited about the software because, as you know, I was at the origin with Gilles and Jean Chaoui of the Blueprint software. We started many years ago with this. I think it's a fantastic tool because it's a teaching tool.
Yes.
It's also a research tool, and it allows the young surgeons and even the old surgeons like me to do the surgery before going in the OR.
Yes.
So, and we call this at that time surgery without error.
Yes, I like that, right? Measure twice and cut once, as a carpenter, as we are.
Exactly.
Listen, Pascal, this has been wonderful. I want to, from all of the orthopedic world, we want to thank you as one of the great shoulder surgeons on the planet. We respect our French colleagues so much for all of the hard work and energy that you put in. You have been an innovator in shoulder. You have been a professor, a teacher, a mentor to so many. We always look forward to you on the podium. It's such a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here today.
Thank you very much. And thank you for doing this show, because I think it's important that people can know the old stories.
Yes, we are the voice of orthopedics, and we share the remarkable stories of our guests. This is Dr. Scott Sigman, #FollowTheFro, host of The Ortho Show. Till next time.